This is the All Rev'd Up podcast, and we are here with a special Black History Month 2023 episode. I'm Reverend Emmett Price.
And I'm Reverend Irene Monroe.
Irene, before we discuss Dr. and Mrs. King's embrace, Hank Willis Thomas's The Embrace, and our own embrace, let us thank each of our listeners and viewers. Thank you for listening to us on the various podcast apps and for watching the live recording of the podcast on our YouTube channel. We are grateful for your support, your encouragement, your feedback, your reviews, and your comments. Thank you so much for sharing the podcast with others.
And a tsunami of thanks to you all for riding this journey with us, and happy Black History Month.
Because you know it's messed up when Black people and the Proud Boys hate the same statue. But I don't know. I guess, maybe we'll end up liking it. You know what I'm saying? We might end up liking
it. On Friday, January 13, 2023, Hank Willis Thomas's The Embrace was unveiled on the historic Boston Common. Thomas and his widely popular piece was selected from 126 submissions through a public process that invited voices from the various neighborhoods of Boston. The Embrace is a 20-foot tall, 20-foot wide bronze sculpture that weighs 19 tons and was welded together from over 600 smaller pieces. The muse of the work is a photo depicting Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Miss Coretta Scott King in an embrace after Dr. King was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964. Irene, I have always said that effective art is always a conversation starter, and this work of art has a whole lot of people talking. What are folks talking about? And what might you say about Thomas's The Embrace?
I started laughing immediately because what comes to my mind is certainly these erotic spoofs on it, and no one has done it as well as Leslie Jones here. But to be very serious about it, it's conceptual art, so it will always be a conversation piece. But let me tell you what I like about it. It's a paradigm shift in so many ways. It's showcasing Black love. We now, as African Americans, have representation in public space, and no better place than the Boston Common, one of the oldest parks in the country. I also like the embrace on so many levels because it moves in honoring the civil rights movement. It's no longer just the charismatic male leader. It's understanding that, number one, Coretta played an enormous part in the movement, and particularly supporting King. I mean, she's the one that starts the center. To be quite honest, King would be nothing but a footnote were it not for her ambitious efforts that history does not, erase this guy. And what I also like about it, particularly when we think about the civil rights movement and the way in which, women were pushed to the background, it makes me think of this statement when I think about the Montgomery bus boycott. That King could not, this is how if Rosa Parks had not sat down on that bus, King could not have risen up. So it shows that it requires everyone in this effort here. But the other thing, that I like about it, and people will not know, is our embrace. I had not seen you face to face in 3 years. And the embrace really reminded me of this because my knees buckle. I was in such joy as well as shock. It's the embrace is a kind of leaning in, but I got you. And that's what that, what the embrace, the statue actually shows. But you will never forget it, Emmett. I don't think you ever will, because it was on the day of your birthday. So after 3 years not seeing you, I have to just make a personal thing about it. It was just absolutely wonderful to see you. But to get back to some of the points I made, we see Black joy in the face of, ongoing resistance, and people don't understand that as we struggle, we do love each other, and they forget, and it's that love, the tenderness and strength, the lifting up and the leaning in that helps us to move forward. I just like the whole idea that, the statue really reminds me of when we huddle in prayer at the altar in church here. But Emmett, if you remember, and we had some wonderful views of it, and we invite people here in this Commonwealth of Massachusetts as well as outside. And I have to say something, Emmett, about that, to come see this statue because
Yeah.
a lot of Black folks in particular say, why would I come to Boston? Now I can say, listen, we got something in Boston Common here. And that's another thing. It will have foot traffic for us too, as Black people here in Boston, to certainly go down there. But the thing that I will always remember, Emmett, and I thought that, the moment, the statue, and not seeing you in 3 years really embraced what King talked about when he talks about love. He talks about agape love, the love of God, philia love, what we got, brotherly, sisterly love, and eros, romantic love. So listen, let me say this, and particularly in January in New England, it brought a whole lot of people together that normally don't come out in the cold in January.
Well, my birthday is 2 days after yours, so we got to celebrate our birthdays in relative time together. And our listeners should know this about you. You don't follow no rules. So we got up close to the statue. Like we was up in, I mean, when you look at some of the media coverage, if you pay attention, you can see Irene and I all up in the photos, all up in the camera views, because we was
That's
right there. We wasn't sitting up under no tent. We were hanging out
Mm-mm.
with Dr. King and Miss Coretta Scott King.
That's
What I
right.
love about this work is not so much the work itself, but the fact that it is placed in what we now call the 1965 Freedom Plaza.
Yeah,
And that Freedom Plaza has over 60 people, some of our leaders, our legacy, some of our mentors,
that's
some of the
right.
folks who really, not only paved the way for you and I, but who mentored
That's
us.
right.
Their names are intoned on the ground. And the embrace really comes out of that. So I agree with you, folks who are not in Boston, folks who are quick to, tout or trope with Seneca Scott has said that this looks like a phalanx or it looks like an erotic, activity, or Leslie Jones talking about munchy, munchy, munchy. I mean, if people need to come experience this, and the fact that the bronze allows for a reflection when you walk
Right.
under the embrace so that you actually see and experience yourself as a part of that. And as we think about Black History Month, we don't want to just keep the legacy of those folks whose shoulders we stand on in the past. We want to embrace them too and say that your lives not only mattered then, but our lives matter because they are connected
Connected.
to those,
Right.
folks who did what they did so that we can be here.
But we also need to be honest about this too, Emmett. Number one is, and I kind of say it's a complicated relationship that King and Coretta had here in Boston. Let's be real. They come up
Yeah.
here in the 50s. I'm not even born. Hey, how about this? I'm not even born. Okay. I'm not even born. And I say that to say because it is, and it's very interesting. It's segregated America. And a lot of people
Mhm.
feel this, that they feel because it's supposedly liberal, Boston or liberal Massachusetts. I always say here that Mason-Dixon line says this: if you're below it, you're down south, and if you're above it, you're up south. And we got to also understand this: that he came in 1965. It was a march from Roxbury to the Boston Common. Why? For the same things he was arguing in 1960. He was marching for in 1965. And remember this, the Selma March was also in 1965.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So what was he marching for? All the kind of things that we now have more contemporary language to talk about it: health disparity, economic disparity, racial disparity, police brutality. I mean, we can go down the list. While it is an embrace of what he stands for, what we stand for, it says quite a bit, a hell of a lot, that the more things change, the more they remain the same. We're still fighting this. And what do you remember that moment, Emmett? I asked you. I said to you, and you said, wait and see. I said, is this substance or symbolism? And you said, wait and see. So it's
Mhm.
inspirational. No offense. I mean, Obama was inspirational. So I mean, and I appreciate that. But we need some stuff hitting the ground. I'm hoping that with the lineup in our government, we will begin to see this?
You know, when Dr. King came up here to Boston in 1965, and it was after the Selma March, because one of the people who died as part of those activities was Reverend James Rev'd,
That's
who was
right.
from Boston. And Dr. King came up here to bear witness to the horrific tragedy that took Reverend Reeves' life, and he actually testified at the State House. And then after that, there was this historic march that you mentioned. And so you're right about the notion that the way things have occurred in our reflective ability to look at history is that the more things change, the more they do stay the same. And yet we can see progress. And yet people suggest that there's more progress, but there's a difference between the aspirational notion of progress and the realized embodied feeling of the progress. So
That's
we can
right.
talk about policies, we can talk about procedures, we can talk about protocols, we can talk about methodologies, we can talk about all that stuff. But as a Black person, if I don't feel it, then
That's right.
I have to ask the question, is it real? And
Or
why are you,
benefit from it. That's
yeah,
right.
or benefit from it?
That's right.
Absolutely.
And so what we're hoping for, because now people talk about representation, and we know that you can have representation without any systemic change. We understand it can be a cosmetic kind of moment here, but I'm hoping that the rubber, when the rubber hits, the road around doing the kind of, as I say, paradigm shift now, in a systemic way, that will happen. Now, should it not, Emmett, at least I can get folks to come up to Boston Common and
Yeah,
say,
yeah.
yes, come up in here now, since everybody done talked about it. Okay. Come and you come and look as well. And I'll make sure, I'll try my best to get you to South Station without getting stopped by police. That's all I can offer then. If
See,
there's not.
now you just went there. I'm so glad it's time for a break, because you look, hey, Rain, you just triggered me. you didn't even give me no warning. This is the All Rev'd Up podcast. We'll be right back.
So mothers around the world, when their babies are born, pray to God when they hold that child, that body and that life will be safe for the rest of his life. Yet we have a mother and a father who mourn the life of a young man who should be here today.
This is the All Rev'd Up podcast. We are back. The first sound that you heard at the top of this episode was Leslie Jones from The Daily Show, the January 17, 2023 episode. And the voice you just heard was the Vice President of the United States of America, Kamala Harris, offering comments on behalf of the American people and President Joe Biden at the homegoing service of Tyree DeAndre Nichols. Irene, you just talked about policing, and you just invoked the policing at South Station here in Boston, but we haven't even got through 2 months of this new year as we are mourning the loss of Tyree DeAndre Nichols, who was murdered, maimed, lynched, tortured by 5 Black police officers and a white police officer. And then, of course, closer to home in the People's Republic of Cambridge, Saeed Faisal, a Muslim brother, was killed by Cambridge police. What in the world is going on here?
Well, let me start with Tyree's case here. This is another watershed moment that I thought, with George Floyd, again, hoping for that paradigm shift. What makes this a bit shocking to a whole lot of people of our complexion is that the cops were Black. Mm-hmm. So it really tells you about the culture of policing in America. And the interesting thing about that, if those cops were out of uniform, they too could have received the same kind of treatment they were doling out to Tyree. They treated him like a human pinata. Mm-hmm. What we now learn is that even with Black cops, the talk will not save you. It just pulls at my heartstrings on so many levels to see another mother cry, but also that it happened in Memphis. And the reason why that bothers me so much, King died in Memphis, if you remember, April 4th, 1968. Okay. Because he was growing the Poor People's Campaign, and it was around the sanitation workers. And the reason why we even could, they have black cops. They have the kind of force that they do in terms of representation is because of the kind of, civil rights activism King was doing, and then particularly did in Memphis. And if you remember the placards the men were wearing, "I am a man." I mean, I felt like these cops have to know this history. And I kind of felt like when Tyree yelled out "mama," before he's taking his last conscious breath, it just makes me cry. He looked at them like what's up, almost like saying, "I'm a man, I'm your brother." And the thing that gets me about it, when I say that if they were out of uniform, they could experience the same thing. Our police commissioner here, Michael Cox, was subject to that, out of uniform, and his comrades did a number on him.
Yeah. I mean, this is horrific. I mean, one of the things about, and just to tie this back to the embrace, on the Friday when the video of this heinous, horrific, just horrible action took place, there was a rally at the Freedom Plaza,
That's
at
right.
the Embrace on the Boston Common. And so you asked me earlier, is this memorial, is this new sculpture just performative? It seems that it will be a location for gathering for folks who are still on this journey towards freedom. And as we think about what has happened in Cambridge,
Yes.
it breaks my heart to see a young person, 20 years old, who was clearly having a mental wellness crisis. And the response by the civil servants was to shoot him rather than to help him. And so come on.
And what bothers me about that, because I reside in Cambridge and was on the task force to make our police force interface with our community, and that we have services that go specifically to people who are having a mental breakdown. A lot of parents here who know me, what they will do, because I was on, the citizen task force, police force, they would call me to have me call the police and ask me to try to get there before the police, so that hopefully they wouldn't shoot me, but I am recognizable. But what we see here about this culture is the devaluation of Black and brown bodies. Saeed should not have died any more than Tyree, because we see white mass murderers. Come on now.
Yeah.
Protected, apprehended, and following protocol as should be. And the first MO here that we see is the devaluation of Black life, the criminalization of Black bodies. Again, it troubles me so much. And I have to say this about Saeed and his family, and we're all just with the family here. Saeed is the only child of an immigrant family here. You could see him at CVS, because his work-study job was in CVS. He was a student at UMass Boston here. And so the things that we're trying to eradicate, and in Cambridge, again, the People's Republic of Cambridge that is flanked with MIT and Harvard. And by the way, we're starting next semester, we'll have a Black president. So this is what I'm saying about representation, but not a systemic change. I'm not saying that that'll happen at Harvard. I'm hoping not. But the point is that we have actually in Cambridge more police on the force, particularly since what happened in 2009 when Professor Henry Louis Gates was arrested. They even had a bear summit or something.
Bear summit.
Okay. So we should know better, but we're not doing better.
Well, I want to mention one thing that our producer shared, and then I want to ask you a question, Irene, before I move into our benediction. Our producer, Cavante Smalls, reminded us that the last time we saw a seated president or vice president who had given such moving and powerful remarks at a homegoing service was back in South Carolina at the Charleston
2015. Yeah.
Mother Bethel, where President Barack Obama gave comments and then broke into song. Here we see Vice President Kamala Harris using her status to really
The
elevate this
platform.
moment,
Hmm.
for the Nichols family. Irene, one thing I have to ask you as we think about Black History Month in 2023, and this takes us back to Memphis and the horrible murder of Tyree DeAndre Nichols. You have often talked about Black white supremacists. Were
That's
these
right.
5 police officers operating within the vein
The
of Black
vein.
white supremacists?
Oh, they will, honey. They drank the entire Kool-Aid. See, I have a couple of things. Zora Neale Hurston said this: all our skin all our skin folk are not our kinfolk. That's number one. And when we talk about black white supremacists, I mean, you got to understand it's an ideology, so it doesn't have a particular color. We see its machinations at its best when the people that it is devised for
Mhm,
participate in their own oppression by using it. That
mhm,
becomes the absolute problem that we see. And we got to understand here again that when you see the iconography of the criminalization of black bodies and the devaluation of it, I mean, oh my goodness. Some say they were drunk with power. No, they listen, the blue wall, but the blue wall didn't protect them because see, their blackness also is the reason why we're
mhm,
getting a fast indictment. Okay.
mm.
Attorney Ben Trump, I love this man and I pray for him every day here and
Ben
stuff.
Crump.
Crump. Okay. Did I say, oh my God. Yes, oh my God. Help me. Help me. Ben Crump. Okay. Ben Crump here. He said that the swiftness at which
Mhm.
they indicted these cops has never been done before. They should have known. They should have known that a new protocol would be set in place. Okay,
And I,
qualified immunity, which we've been fighting for, qualified immunity did not work here.
on that note, let me offer our closing part. From the King's embrace to Hank Willis Thomas's The Embrace to our embrace at the unveiling, one thing is clear: affection can take many forms. As much as I am affectionate about art and creative expression, especially when the muse and focus is Black culture
Mm.
in its most inclusive and diasporic forms, I am equally affectionate about Black history. Regardless of what people think about the embrace, we should be excited about the 1965 Freedom Plaza that serves as the foundation for the embrace. In a season where Black lives are being erased from educational curricula, Black books are being banned from public libraries, and Black people continue to be treated ungraciously and unkindly due to white fragility, the white gaze, and the vestiges of white supremacist ideologies, the 1965 Freedom Plaza and the embrace that sits upon it speak loudly against the erasure that is happening across the land.
Yes.
In a season where clickbait, media sensationalism, and outdated tropes would cause some to continue to ask, is Boston the most racist city in the nation? I prefer to focus on the embrace that the Kings, that Thomas, and that you and I, Irene, are trying to inspire in this moment and the season ahead. Our world needs a hug.
Mm.
Our nation needs a hug. And frankly, there is nothing like an embrace that is filled with Black love, Black joy, Black hope, and Black possibility. So peace and blessings as we continue to honor, celebrate, and reflect on Black History Month 2023. Ashe
Ashe, my brother.
and amen.
Amen, Reverend Price. I love you.
All Revs Rev'd Up is brought to you by us, the Revs. Our amazing producers are Kyla Wright and Cavante Smalls.
Music for this episode is from Reverend Price's son and musical prodigy, Emmett G. Price IV. All Rev'd Up is distributed by GBH.
Additional thanks to Bob Kenneth, Elizabeth O'Brien, May He, Devin Robbins, Meredith Neerman, and Zach Waldman.
If you like what you hear, let us know. Give us a review on Apple Podcasts and follow us at All Rev'd Up Pod on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube.
Feel free to send us a note, a question, or a comment to allrevduppod@gmail.com. We'll be back